Hey everyone, it's Emrys and welcome back to my channel. So, since the last video went over so well with all of you as to why I quit 100 Jumpers, I have some more story time to share with you. So I've got a couple of stories to share, and these are really based in my falls. Going into working with my trainer. We called her Allie last time, so we'll keep calling her Allie this time. So the first fall that I'm going to talk about is before I met Allie, and kind of the whole leading up to, my falls while I was her student and whatnot. So first, we've got to, set the Wayback Machine. My first fall was off of Merlin. This is before I even met her. But this is very, very important when we get into the later stories. So this is when Merlin was still very, very green, and he didn't have, the best foundation. Well, it was the first time ever putting my all-purpose English saddle on him, and this is totally my fault. Like, I own this mistake because I didn't have anybody to show me, how to do it. I didn't know. And so put on my saddle and everything, and there was a storm, mind you. He was getting all fussy because of the storm, and he didn't know how to stand still, and he was just in a mood. I was in a mood. He was making me mad because he didn't want to listen. He didn't want to stand still and just, relax for a couple of seconds. And then we go on towards the arena, and I've got to get on. Well, at the time, he didn't know what a mounting block was, and I was trying to stand on a hay bale, one of our hay bales that we'd bought to feed him, since at the time it was a we care for him, it wasn't a full care. We had to buy his food and feed him and everything. And we get into the round pen, and the first time he bucks, I sit it. Like, I was not going nowhere. I was stubborn. I was not going to come off without a fight. Well, second time he bucked, it went from just, I'm unhappy bucks to full-on rodeo rough stock underneath me. He threw me so hard, I partially dented the round pen panel that was on the outside of the round pen we were riding in. After he got me off and I hit the ground hard, like there was a Emrys-sized imprint on the ground, when I got done riding and I got back up. Getting on was so painful. I hurt so bad. My trust in him went from 100 to 0. And I didn't want to get back on, but I knew I had to. I got back on after much convincing from my mom and her helping me get a leg up, because I can't mount from the ground. I still can't. And especially with my English saddle, it's just better not to. But at the time I didn't have that option, and he really didn't know any other way to get on except for mounting from the ground because of Western saddles and everything. Well, fast forward, because of this fall, I had not ridden him in 6 months. I was scared of him. I could work him on the ground flawlessly. I was so confident, but anytime you went to go get me up in that saddle, I'd have a panic attack. I was so scared of being thrown off again. And it wasn't that I'd never fallen off before. It was that it was my first time ever being bronked off. Like, he could have shown the rodeo horses that do the bucking broncos some tips. It was that exaggerated when he threw a fit. Now, as I said before, totally my fault. My saddle slid back too far. It was too wide for his withers. It was an extra wide instead of a medium wide, which I now know he needs. And it slid back and it was landing on his kidney. So, again, totally my fault. But then I got a message after a little while of riding, the lesson horses. And then the first month that Merlin was in training with Allie, in her training program, I didn't ride him at all. I still had lessons, but I wasn't riding. She was riding him that first month so that she could get, a feel of him, see what his quirks were, and yada, yada, yada. Well, again, me being me, I had no idea what I was doing, and I just kind of went with it. Then I got the message that I was going to ride him in a lesson, and she was going to teach me because my normal instructor, who we have not named, she was the working student, we'll come up with a name for her later, she had some kind of emergency and she couldn't be there, so Allie took over the lesson. And it was really weird because I'd never had a lesson with her. I was so anxious. And not to mention, I was terrified of getting on Merlin. Then go into the arena and we get to the mounting block. I go to get on and he is super, super tense and super anxious, like won't stand next to the mounting block, none of it. And it was making me nervous. Anytime put my foot in the stirrup, he'd move and I'd almost fall again. And it freaked me out. It was not a good situation because I was afraid and he was afraid. And it was hard to actually get back on him and have that lesson. He was feeding off of the emotions that I was feeling. Like, he was really feeling all the anxiety that I was giving off every time I tried to get on. Like, I was trembling anytime I get on. I mean, I always was very, unconfident getting on the lesson horses and everything, just because, I was self-conscious about hurting them, because at the time I was really struggling with my weight, and it's come way down since I bought Merlin, and I'm doing a lot better and I'm a lot stronger. But at the time I was struggling. The confidence to get on, it would take me almost like 10, 15 minutes just to get on, and that was half my hour-long lesson over. Finally got on, and, that whole lesson all was fine. Well, fast forward, I was having a lesson with the working student again. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this girl. I would not trade her for the world, and she and I have a wonderful relationship. She parted ways with Allie, because she was being taken advantage of, and now I work, every now and then as a groom for her when we go to, the local shows around where we're at. And I love this girl. As I said before, she's wonderful. She's really the one that got me into, the eventing side of things, since she does it. And that's how I really got to see it in person and what it's like. And it just made me fall more in love. We were having a lesson and I was on Merlin. I'd gotten a lot better, a lot more confident about getting on. But again, crap happens. So I go to get on. Everything's fine. I get on. Swing my leg over. It had taken me less time to get on. We were really proud of me. I was proud of me. And I went to, slip my stirrup over the ball of my foot. So I leaned down to put the stirrup on my foot. And Merlin starts walking. Like, fast walking. He didn't understand how to pace himself at this point in time. And he walks and walks and walks. And he is beelining it at the fastest, walk, half trot, gated mess ever. And he's like, oh, there's a wall there. I don't want to run into the wall. So what does he do? He makes a sharp 90-degree turn, and I start falling off the side. Oh, wait. It gets better. I don't just, fall to the ground and him walk past me. He pins me between himself and the wall of this arena. There is still, to this day, a black skid mark on the wall of that stable where my helmet was scraped across the white wall between my horse and him. And then eventually I fell. And I just kind of sat there after I fell off, and I looked at him and I'm like, you're a brat. You are a giant butthead. Made the student, working student bust up laughing. She thought I was gonna lose my temper at him or whatever. Honestly, he kind of deserved it because he'd been a butt earlier, but I was just laughing. It was hilarious. And then fast forward to another lesson that I had, except this one was being coached by Allie herself. And I'm in the outdoor arena. Merlin never really liked the indoor arenas, so that probably didn't help my falling off previously. We're in the outdoor arena. He's a lot more confident. He's a lot more forward. Just a lot more relaxed. I don't know if he's ever shown, in an actual, arena setting. So I don't know if he's got some, trauma linked to it or what. Everything was going fine, doing walk trot. He was moving forward and confident in everything. And then we go around this corner, we just passed the round pen, and the next thing I know, there is this loud bang. So on one side of the arena, so on my right side of the arena, all the way on the other side of like this big outdoor arena, you've got all three trainers sitting underneath like this little awning thing teaching lesson. Then on the other side of the arena where I was riding, it had been raining prior to this. It had been raining and they'd watered the arena to keep the dust down since they didn't have proper arena dirt. They just had, dirt. Whatever the heck. I don't know how I'm supposed to describe it. It's just dirt. But then there's this bang. And the next thing I know, it was like a cartoon fall. And I mean that in the funniest way possible. It was like, the next thing I know, my horse is next to me, and I'm still in the air, looking down, looking back up, and then I hit the floor. And the second I hit the floor, there was a second bang, and Merlin took off. Thankfully, again, it was arena, so it was closed. And everything was fine. And while myself and the working student knew that the fault of the fall was not my own doing, it was the fact that there was a noise that spooked him, the head trainer, Allie, comes up, grabs pulls me up off the ground, and she scolds me right, left, and sideways for falling, for not keeping good posture, for not doing this, that, and the other, not saving it. I should have done this, should have done that. And I kind of just had to stand there, and I'm like, I felt like I was in a Tom and Jerry cartoon for a second, and there was nothing I could do about it. Next thing I know, there's no horse under my butt, and I'm in the dirt. And oh boy. I take my horse from the working student. She makes sure I'm okay. I was fine. I was a little grumpy at him for it. But, I mean, I understand. They're flight animals. They're going to get scared and run away. Now, we've got another story. This one takes place after Merlin has been injured. Okay, so he is maybe a couple weeks into stall rest. And at this time, my trainer has bought this broke Percheron that is 19.3 hands that she can barely handle herself, let alone get on, and puts in her lesson program. And on Instagram, she posts about it saying that, oh, this is for my, my plus size students. And at the time, I was one of the only plus size students that she had. I was not proud of it. I was taking steps to, take care of it, but it was very much like singling me out. And I was a little upset, and I had decided, first and foremost, the number one thing I did not want to do, I did not want to get on that horse. He was too big for me to feel comfortable, and for there to be a point in riding him. Like, do you guys even realize how big 19.3 is? And then you add into account that I'm 5'7.5". I'm almost 5'8". And Duke is not properly trained. He is so not trained. I had to lower my stirrup to the last hole and get a counterbalance while someone is like shoving their elbow into his flank so that he will stay next to the mounting block so that I can get on. Next problem. They did not have a properly fitted bridle to the size of head that he had. This horse weighs actually a ton, like a literal ton. And he was put in a hunter jumper lesson program. What is wrong with this picture? I had asked before getting put on this horse. Now, mind you, this was Allie's doing. Allie wanted me to ride him. While, unfortunately, the working student, I'll come up with a name in a minute, she had no choice. She was forced to put me on him. I was like, I don't want to ride him. I do not feel safe riding him. And she's like, I'm sorry, look, there is no other option right now. You have to ride him. It was either I get on and ride him or a young child, and I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old, gets put on this horse for a lesson. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't risk a child getting hurt. Now, a little bit more information on this. My best friend, and I actually talk about her a lot on Instagram, my friend Jorvik's Mage, or Runara, she was there with me when this fall took place. She was actually holding my service dog while I was taking this lesson. She was sitting in like this little, audience area, like this observation area. It was not very well put together, very uncomfortable seats, just holding him so that I could take my lesson, since she'd been hanging out with me for the day. And Ollie's there with her. This is really early in Oliver's training. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to give a quick little bit of info here. Oliver is my medical alert service dog. And I'm getting into why he is my medical alert service dog. And it pertains to this fall. So, get on this horse, and first and foremost, I can't find my riding gloves. My riding gloves were taken by someone, and I was pissed. Because at the time, I wasn't keeping my tack in with all the other lesson students' tack. I had my own locker at the time. I was paying to have my own locker. So, I wasn't using it anymore. Now, I get everything tacked up, and I am gripping these reins so hard that there were fingernail indents in the palm of my hand from holding on to this because he was so strong. Now, mind you, Duke, once he decided he didn't want to do something or he didn't want to stop, there was no way that you were going to get him to do what you wanted. It was all him. Now, it started just walking around. Everything was fine. I was nervous, but I was trying to be, calm, confident, because I know he was green, and he would have fed off of what I was feeling. Started out fine, then we started trotting. Now, I come to find out that he had thrown another girl off during a lesson. However, the reason she had been thrown off pertained to the fact that there were doves with a nest inside our indoor arena. And because of how high up we were on Duke, it would piss the birds off. So they'd start dive bombing him and trying to go for his ears, trying to peck at him, if you were on him, that sort of thing. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So I'm on and we're trotting around and everything's fine. Now, I say my first canter was on Azalea, but I kind of lied. So, okay, my first proper canter was on her, but on Duke, during this lesson, trotting around, everything was fine. It was dead silent. Runara wasn't talking. Oliver wasn't making a peep. The working student was quiet, watching me. Everything was fine. You could have heard a cricket or a pin drop in that sand arena. It was so quiet. And the doves weren't even there. They weren't even trilling or anything. Next thing I know, Duke decides he's had enough. And he takes off with me. A 1-ton Percheron takes off with me on his back. I am not proud of the things I had to do to get him to stop, but I was yanking at his face because he had taken the bit in his teeth and was running away with me. I don't know about you, but I don't want to die. And I kind of felt like I was gonna die because of how hard he was running. When he would run, I had one lesson while the first time Allie ever rode him, and it, the earth shook underneath this horse. He was so big and so heavy. And he booked it. He was not, he had no intention of stopping. I finally got so mad and I yanked so hard that he finally went to a stop. This is where it gets kind of ironic. He ends up stopping at the same spot where I had fallen off of Merlin months prior, and there is a skid mark on the wall. He stops. All is well, and I've got good grip on these reins. Well, he's offended that I stopped him and wouldn't let him keep running away with me. Well, next thing I know, he bucks. Now, I don't care how good of a rider you are. You are not prepared for that much force to throw you up in the air. He was at a dead standstill when he did this. All he did, he lifted his butt and he bucked. I went flying. Complete somersault in the air, like 360, all the way around. And headed for a half somersault in the air before making contact with the floor with my helmet, cracking the inside liner of my helmet. Now, thank the gods that I was actually wearing a helmet, and it was just a simple Troxel, very, basic brand. I'm pretty sure they're kind of all over the world. Nothing fancy. And I hit hard. Like, hard. It hurt. Now, mind you, as I hit the floor, Oliver lost it. He was yanking at his leash, trying to get free from Renara to come over to me and make sure that I was okay. Like, his instinct to, take care of me as my service dog really took over for him, and he was panicking. Well, I fell, and I kind of just laid there because not only did the wind get knocked out of me, my head hurt so bad. And I just laid there. The person teaching my lesson. Okay, we need to come up with a name here real quick. We'll call her Jay. So we'll call the working student Jay. Jay grabs Duke's reins, catches him, and then another working student that they happen to have at the time, or like a trial working student or something, like she wanted to be one, comes into the arena. Or no. See, this is all really fuzzy because this is the thing that really screwed me up, especially now, and I still really fight with this. I think either she handed Duke off to someone who had been also there with at my lesson, or she called the assistant trainer, who is a practicing nurse. Either way, they come in and they check on me. I'm not allowed to sit up, and I'm laying down. Then finally, while I'm sitting down, they check me out, and everything is, fine, and I don't have anything, broken. My back's not out or anything. And all is right with the world according to them. Now, I have a pounding headache, and Allie, comes in with her assistant trainer, grabs Duke, and Duke gets a Repent Ye Sinners meeting. This is one of the few times that I actually approve of him getting a Repent Ye Sinners meeting. Come to Jesus moment for throwing me off, because it was terrifying. Smoothest canter I ever rode. Super freaking comfortable. It was like butter. But terrifying. Which is really weird to think about. Now, after a while, and he's, been schooled on throwing people off, this being his second offense, he is soaked in sweat by the time I get back in the arena. I don't want to get back on because I don't feel good. My head hurts, I'm dizzy, I'm nauseous, and it was not a good situation at all. Of course, because I never got any say in the matter when it came to the way that Allie would teach. She decided that I was going to be getting back on anyway. And I was not okay with it. I got forced to get back on this horse. Mind you, I was not ready for a horse like that. Which is ironic, considering that I say that Merlin is not a horse for everybody. But at the time, I was still, emotionally recovering from Merlin being hurt. And I didn't want to be on other horses and everything. But no, I think this was before Merlin got hurt. Slightly before. I think he was just having a down day and I was having a lesson on Duke. Anyway. But they checked me out. They forced me to get back on. I do not have any pictures of me on Duke. And quite frankly, I am glad that I don't have any pictures of me on Duke. Because he, to this day, scares me. And I don't know why the heck Allie decided he was a good fit for a lesson program. He is not trained in the slightest. Now I get back on and I do this lesson. I was not happy. I was not feeling well. I did not finish the rest of the stalls that I was supposed to clean that day. I left Ray a message and I was like, hey, look, I just had a nasty fall. I'm going home. I am not going to be able to finish these. He was pissed, of course, because Ray was always pissed off if I didn't get everything done the way he wanted me to, and he'd say I was lazy and all this other stuff. But I was miserable. Come that night, my fiance comes over and we're having dinner. It's spaghetti. And I get the most excruciating headache feeling on the side of my skull that I had hit. It was so bad, I felt like throwing up. I broke down crying because everything about my, sensitivity to everything was, over 100%. And I ended up going in the next day to the ER to get I think it was a CT scan. I think it was a head CT. For checking to see how bad the concussion was and everything. And I was told, after they did all the imaging and everything, that I was perfectly fine, that there was nothing wrong with me. Now, after that, I went home. I was still completely miserable, but I was told that I needed to take the week off for my riding lessons. Now, because of the way that Allie behaved, if you missed a lesson and you didn't inform her, you had to pay a $60 cancellation fee per lesson that you canceled or you missed. You had to pay her for you not riding her horse. It was great. And I was like, I can't afford to not pay for this. So in the end, I paid for it Friday early before I should have even been had my butt back on a horse. I was back on a horse having a lesson with Jay. And Jay was wonderful, and she put me on their nicest lesson horse. I actually have the videos from this lesson still. I was doing a lot better with my riding at that point. And she was saying, the second you feel dizzy, the second something is off, we're taking you right off that horse and you're done. I don't care what, Allie says, we're going at your pace. And because I didn't have tunnel vision like Allie did at one point when she had a bad fall, therefore my pain and my suffering from getting, my head smashed in partially, my brain soup wiggled, I was fine. Now, that really struck a nerve with me, but I kind of just had to keep my mouth shut and, deal with it because Merlin was injured. I couldn't ride any other horses except for the lesson horses. Because by this time, Merlin was, in starting his recovery process. And it was devastating, again, because I felt like crap. I was constantly having head pain, and the funny thing is the first few weeks, I had really bad headaches, migraines, whatever you want to call them, but then, it disappeared. Well, come, months later, I start having extreme migraines. And I'm not talking about just like light hurts and my eyes hurt and everything. This was darkness hurt, light hurt. My skull felt like it was flexing all the time, even though I know that's not a thing. And I was feeling nauseous all the time. I couldn't keep food down because it was so bad, and I was so sensitive to everything. Smells were god awful, and even now they're terrible for me. If it's too strong, it's migraine inducing. Which leads us into why Oliver is my medical alert dog. Because I was put on this horse that never should have been put into a lesson program that I was not ready for, I now have what is called chronic migraine. Now, I'm not going to go too much in depth explaining this. If you want to go find someone that knows, explains a lot about this, I really recommend Momming with Migraine on YouTube. She really talks about it. She also has a migraine service dog. She has obviously other conditions that go with it, but she really goes through all the in-depth explaining that could possibly be done about chronic migraine. But for me, long story short, I get migraines so bad that I feel dizzy, I feel nauseous, I'm going to throw up, and I faint. And part of Oliver's job is to warn me before I pass out and faint. Now, much later on, after, Merlin has been, on box rest for a couple of months, and he's had, a follow-up x-ray and everything, and I still can't ride him, I start leasing Azalea. This wonderful halflinger mare that I still adore to this day, and I'm really sad that at the opportunity I had to buy her, I did not have the money to do so, because I could barely afford to keep Merlin. If I had, I would have taken her immediately. Like, I was looking for I wasn't looking for whatever Merlin is when I first started horse shopping. I was looking for, Azalea, a literal schoolmaster of a horse. Lost out, got to lease her for 2 months. Totally worth it. If it wasn't for that horse, I wouldn't have, started riding it again, learned how to jump and all this fun stuff. Unfortunately, we were having a jumping lesson, and one of the individuals that was on, like, the board of directors or whatever for the stable decided that, because he went down to Australia for a couple of months, he was now this, Indiana Jones guy, and he would crack bullwhips around his horses. Great for you. Your horses don't care. That's wonderful. Except for the small problem that he was cracking them outside in the dark during an active show jumping lesson. Well, hunter jumper lesson. You get what I mean. A jumping lesson. Now, Azalea typically was not a very spooky horse. Most of the horses were very spooky, and Azalea was just like, meh, I don't care. We had a little kid almost get thrown off of, like, one of the most solid lesson horses that they have, and it was becoming a problem. Well, I'm working on, picking up my canter, having a good seat and everything, and being really, soft with myself, my whole body when I'm riding. And the next thing I know, 3 cracks go off in quick succession. 1, 2, 3. And Azalea lurches forward and, rears up and bucks, and I am thrown off into the wall. And it didn't bother me, falling off didn't bother me because Azalea was only 13.3, I think. Not a very big horse, and not a very far fall. I was more irritated at the fact that the guy felt he needed to be, Mr. Fancy Cowboy or whatever you want to call it. And I was not happy. Got back on, have the picture of the day that I fell. Don't have a picture of me falling or a video of me falling, but it's surprising because I realized how much I'd changed after my fall off of Duke. I wasn't afraid to fall anymore because I fell from so high up and I hit my head so hard that it kind of like got rid of the fear of falling completely. I mean, I don't enjoy it, but it wasn't as terrifying anymore. Also taught me to have a way stronger seat and what my mom likes to call Velcro butt, so that I don't come out of my saddle as easily. But that was the last fall I ever had while with my trainer, Allie, and it's ironic because while I'd fallen off of Merlin when I just owned him myself, you know, it was just me, it was one time when I was terrified and I needed someone like Allie to, you know, be that assertive voice in my ear and get me back on my horse. But while I don't blame Azalea in any way, I definitely blame Allie for putting me on a horse like Duke when I was not ready and putting her students' lives at risk when she herself can't even handle him. I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. So today was really focusing on all of my, you know, falls while with this trainer, and we had the one before I met her and what like really led up to me, you know, joining her training program and everything. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you had fun, you know, listening to the story of me falling off a lot. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave them down below. I'm not going to do the typical, you know, YouTuber spiel of like, comment, share, subscribe, that whole thing. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and give it a like. If you
refresh
didn't,
the page. They don't actually give you all of the possible
more than happy
combinations.
to take any constructive criticism or anything.
They should,
I hope you guys
but they don't.
have a great evening, and I'll see you guys next time.